Okay, what do I love about Vegas? Vegas, the people who live there, the people who live there happen to be some of the nicest people in the world.
Wayne Newton once dazzled the world as Mr. Las Vegas, a name synonymous with glitz, glamour, and sold-out shows. But behind the velvet voice and the tuxedos, a hidden struggle was quietly unraveling, a struggle so intense it nearly destroyed everything he had built. How does a man who embodied success on the Vegas Strip find himself buried under millions of dollars in debt? At 83, Newton's story is not just about loss, but also resilience and mystery. What exactly led this iconic entertainer from the pinnacle of fame to financial ruin? The answer is more unexpected and revealing than many realize. Financial collapse beginnings. Wayne Newton's financial troubles didn't happen overnight. Behind the glittering shows and the packed Vegas theaters, a slow unraveling had begun, a quiet erosion of wealth that few noticed at first. Though he continued to perform regularly, the pressure of keeping up a lavish lifestyle while managing growing debts was mounting beneath the surface. For decades, Wayne had built an empire based on success and charm, but cracks were emerging that threatened everything he had worked for. The initial sparks of financial instability remained somewhat mysterious, cloaked by Newton's public image as Mr. Las Vegas. Fans saw the sold-out crowds and the endless tour dates, but the reality behind the curtains was far more complex. It was not just a matter of overspending, but also of risky decisions and partnerships that ultimately backfired. This combination slowly eroded his fortune, pushing him toward a crossroads that no performer ever wants to face. What makes Wayne Newton's downfall compelling is that it wasn't a sudden scandal or a one-time mistake. Instead, it was a mix of personal choices, external pressures, and unfortunate associations that compounded over time. At its core, it became a story about how even the brightest stars can struggle with financial shadows, ones that grow longer the more they try to hide them. The question that lingers is, what was the one thing that became the tipping point? Despite the growing troubles, Wayne still fought to keep his career afloat and his public persona intact. Performing night after night, he tried to maintain the illusion of success, even as debts and lawsuits loomed threateningly behind the scenes. The burden wasn't visible on stage, but it weighed heavily on his life off stage. His financial crisis became a silent undercurrent running through years of performances and headlines. Adding to the challenge was the complexity of managing multiple business ventures simultaneously. The very ventures that could have secured his legacy instead became financial liabilities. What began as calculated risks soon spiraled into overwhelming obligations. Banks, investors, and creditors started closing in as the fine balance between income and outgo tipped dangerously toward the latter. Public perception also began to shift when reports surfaced about Newton's financial status. The image of an untouchable Vegas legend clashed with news of unpaid taxes, debts totaling millions, and eventual bankruptcy filings. The applause faded behind the growing whispers of financial mismanagement. Papers and tabloids ran headlines that no entertainer wants, and the spotlight on Wayne's troubles intensified. His bankruptcy in the mid-1990s was a public acknowledgement of the depth of the crisis. Chapter 11 meant restructuring debts and legal protection from creditors, but it also spelled a humiliating milestone for someone who had once symbolized triumph and wealth. This was a pivotal moment where Newton faced the stark reality that his empire was crumbling. Yet even this chapter didn't reveal the full story behind the financial collapse. The real turning point was layered beneath public filings and media reports, hidden in the complexities of Newton's business relationships and personal choices. While many knew he was struggling, few understood the full scale or the underlying reasons. The complete truth would only come later, revealing how one crucial factor overshadowed everything else. Newton's story is a reminder that behind every financial decline lies a sequence of decisions, challenges, and unforeseen consequences. It all adds up to a human story much more than a headline or a scandal. What started as whispers and signs of trouble would eventually lead to a reckoning that few expected, but which had been quietly building for years. The challenges Wayne faced were not isolated to his finances alone. They crept into every part of his life and career in the years that followed. This connection between personal choices and financial outcomes would become more evident as we look at his lifestyle during the height of his fame. Wayne's extravagant lifestyle was both a testimony to his success and a factor that sped up the unraveling of his wealth. Vegas, stardom, and lifestyle. Wayne Newton kinda rose to fame in Las Vegas in a way that felt fast and spectacular. Like one day it was just local buzz. Then suddenly, he was everywhere. By the 1970s, he wasn't only a performer anymore, he was basically a staple on the Strip, delighting millions with that smooth voice and a really polished stage manner. And once things took off, the rest of his life started to look like the glitz around him. Big houses, high-end cars, and a never-ending crew became these signs of where he stood and what he liked. Still, this flashy life had a price tag, and it wasn't small. Newton was living like a real Vegas mogul, with all the extras, not just comfort, but outright excess. Keeping more than one property, paying for the grand living, plus this almost constant traveling routine meant the bills added up huge, even when you look at it beside what he was earning. It wasn't only spending money, though. It was more like protecting that image of absolute victory, the whole top-of-the-world vibe, every single day. The issue was that this whole way of living was not always cushioned by steady income streams. Like as the entertainment industry kept changing and audiences drifted, staying at that pace meant it got more and more expensive just to keep everything afloat. The bigger the empire Newton kept building, the more it turned out to be sensitive to any financial shocks. What started off as this clear little trophy of success slowly turned into a weight that actually drained his own resources. Backstage, the stress kind of piled up. Newton's financial documents reportedly showed millions in debts and unpaid taxes, which is a weird contrast with the man who kept showing up bravely for his fans night after night. The whole Mr. Las Vegas persona didn't really align with the real story of obligations piling higher and profit margins tightening. So, balancing public love with private turmoil became this everyday maneuver, a kind of coordination that never really paused. It reached one of those dangerous tipping moments where ambition met spending that couldn't last. Newton's taste for the extravagant was basically famous already, but at some point, the debt gathered faster than his income. Why continue with a lifestyle that cost so much when the ground underneath was weakening anyway? For Wayne, it was also about identity. Being the star meant he had to keep a specific image, even if it meant sacrificing financial steadiness. This connection between identity and expense is pretty normal in celebrity land, but with Newton, it was even louder, mostly because of how tight his real-life ties were to Vegas. The city's culture of luxury and too much of everything kind of pushed the whole idea of status forward, so it became hard to stop or tighten the belt on spending. Honestly, the way he lived was at the same time a working tool, not just a personal preference or whatever you want to call it. Big entourages, luxury vehicles, and more than one home aren't only treats, they're more like the surrounding conditions that keep a performer visible, and not just in a faint way. With Wayne Newton, those obvious signals helped build the Mr. Las Vegas story. But the further you go inside that glittery machine, the harder it gets to step back without looking embarrassed, or without risking a chance at some big moment. It's a double-edged kind of thing, sharp on both sides. Even though his music and that smooth charm brought people in, the business part of the act kept demanding more and more money. And getting that money in a steady way wasn't easy, especially once market trends began to wiggle around. That mismatch between what came in and what was going out turned into a widening gap that slowly but surely started to chew at his financial ground. So he ended up in a loop where he needed cash, just to keep the aura of success running. The pursuit of greater wealth and influence pushed Wayne Newton into dangerous territory. Risky business ventures. Wayne Newton's ambition extended far beyond the stage. As his performing career flourished, he sought to leverage his fame into business opportunities that could secure his financial future. This included acquiring properties, investing in casinos, and partnering with others on major ventures. But not all these moves paid off. Some would have devastating consequences. One of the most ambitious attempts was Newton's purchase of the Aladdin Hotel and Casino on the Las Vegas Strip in 1980. Owning the Aladdin would have positioned him not only as a headlining performer but as a major player in the city's lucrative casino business. It was an iconic symbol of Vegas luxury and success, and Wayne was eager to be its owner. However, the deal proved far more complicated than he had anticipated. Securing financing for such a venture required partnerships with investors, some of whom were rumored to have troubling connections. Notably, Wayne worked with Guido Pinosi, a man allegedly tied to organized crime, which would later plague Newton's reputation and business prospects. The association with individuals linked to the mob became public knowledge after an investigative report in 1980 by NBC raised alarming questions about Newton's business dealings. The network accused him of using these shadowy connections to influence the casino purchase, a scandal that rocked Wayne's public image. Though he challenged the accusations legally, the controversy cast a long shadow over his endeavors. Newton's lawsuit against NBC resulted in an initially large damages award, but subsequent reductions and overturning of the case left his reputation more vulnerable than ever. The public's trust, once grounded in his wholesome entertainer image, was replaced by doubt and suspicion. This change in perception made business dealings more difficult and increased scrutiny around every move he made. Meanwhile, the management and financial performance of his ventures struggled under this cloud. The pressure to succeed financially while fighting off legal and reputational battles took a toll not only on his businesses, but on Newton personally. The Aladdin deal, instead of being a crown jewel, began to feel more like a millstone. Additional partnerships and projects similarly failed to yield the stability and profits Newton hoped for. His business ambitions, fueled by his desire to grow beyond the celebrity spotlight, often collided with the harsh realities of investment risk and legal complications. In hindsight, these ventures shaped much of the trajectory leading to his financial decline. Despite these setbacks, Newton tried to maintain his business aspirations, believing that success offstage was essential to his long-term survival. But the costly mistakes and controversial alliances he made undermined this vision, accelerating the financial challenges that already threatened his personal fortune. From these precarious business decisions flowed problems that touched every aspect of his life, including friendships and alliances, which we will examine next. The mob connection scandal. Wayne Newton's whole financial and professional world kind of got darker fast once allegations started floating around that somehow tied him to organized crime. In the early 1980s, after his pretty ambitious bid to purchase the Aladdin Hotel and Casino, people started whispering about business partnerships that looked questionable. Behind the curtains, kind of the core of it, was a guy named Guido Pinosi, who was said to have real deep ties with the mob. And it wasn't only idle gossip either, because that link kicked off a big investigation, the type that would keep coming back and haunt Newton for decades. The whole thing finally spilled into the public eye in 1980, when NBC ran an investigative report that accused Newton of using mob connections to land the Aladdin deal. For a man who was already widely seen as a beloved entertainer, those claims were brutally damaging. Fans, who used to love his charismatic performances, couldn't really square the image of Mr. Las Vegas with the idea of him being tangled in the shadowy, under-the-radar world of organized crime. That broadcast sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry and also right into the Las Vegas business community like a flare. Newton shot back pretty fast, filing a lawsuit against NBC for libel, sort of shaking things up. He loudly denied the claims and kept pushing hard to protect his reputation. The whole legal fight dragged on, and it got pretty ugly. At first, it actually ended with a big damages award for Newton, something like $19.3 million. But that win didn't really last, because the court decision was later trimmed down and then eventually thrown out completely by a federal appeals court. After that, Newton was left with no legal way forward, and the public doubts stayed there, kind of unresolved. The suspicion didn't stop at the courthouse doors either. Newton's earlier clean image got dulled, replaced with this persistent sense of mistrust and a little bit of intrigue. People started looking at him differently, and the story moved away from just his musical skill to more uncomfortable questions about his business morals. And his ties to Pinocchio, no matter what the court said in the end, became the main thread people remembered in his career. It basically swallowed up a lot of his other professional wins. By the time the 1980s kept rolling on, this mess seemed to pile onto other difficulties Newton already had. Even though he kept performing, the rumors about mob connections likely pushed away some fans and business partners. Staying visible and working through that level of scrutiny took real toughness, but it also made the behind-the-scenes money stress worse. It's pretty easy to argue that the scandal turned into a pivot point, one that sped up his financial unraveling. Newton's willingness to talk with, honestly, questionable types put him in situations that he maybe underestimated a bit. The promise of quickly expanding his wealth and influence through Vegas casinos sounded smooth at first, but it came with complications he couldn't really steer. Then the darker side of the city started seeping into his everyday world, changing not just how people saw him, but also his chances for future business growth. Risk and reputation got tangled up together in a way that few entertainers ever really meet. Also, that cloud over his head didn't stay at work only, it followed into his personal life too. Trust and loyalty, which are crucial in friendship and business both, began to loosen. The relationships with people like Pinocchio planted, seeds of doubt, even where he least expected it, especially among those closest to him. This chapter started as something almost ordinary, and then it turned into deeper troubles where fame and fortune collided with controversy, plus this constant suspicion. Even with all the damage, Newton wouldn't just vanish quietly. He kept performing, thinking that his talent might eventually drown out the scandal, or at least put it in the background. Still, the financial weight stayed there, heavier over time, and it was worsened by expensive legal battles. On top of that, public goodwill kept shrinking. The man who once held the Strip's spotlight was now stuck, not in a metaphorical way exactly, but in a real fight for survival, while accusations pressed in and tried to question his integrity. The strain from these controversies echoed into his closest partnerships, testing bonds that once seemed unbreakable. The Tony Orlando fallout. During the late 1990s, Wayne Newton sought to revitalize his career and expand his business ventures by partnering with fellow entertainer Tony Orlando. They launched an ambitious project, a theater on the Las Vegas Strip called The Talk of the Town, intended to become a prime entertainment destination. Both men brought their star power and experience to the table, hoping to create a new hotspot amid the city's ever-competitive landscape. The plan was bold, with a venue boasting a capacity of over 2,000 seats. However, the reality proved far less promising. From the outset, the theater struggled to fill even half the seats during performances. This lackluster attendance resulted in mounting financial losses and placed tremendous stress on the partnership. What was meant to be a symbol of resurgence quickly felt like a sinking venture. As financial pressures intensified, tensions between Newton and Orlando began to surface. The situation worsened dramatically when Orlando's son stumbled upon several concealed recording devices in their shared private office. The discovery was shocking and led to accusations that Newton had been spying on Orlando's conversations. Whether true or not, the suspicion was enough to shatter the trust between the two longtime friends. Tony Orlando confronted Newton over these allegations, but Newton denied any involvement in the bugging. Despite his denials, the damage was irreversible. Orlando abruptly ended their partnership and publicly distanced himself from Newton, a move that left Newton isolated in a costly business doomed to fail. Losing such a significant ally was a devastating blow for a man already grappling with public scandal and financial strain. The fallout didn't just affect their business, it also deeply harmed Newton's personal reputation. Fans and critics alike began to question his character. The spy accusation, whether fact or rumor, cast a shadow over his integrity, further dimming the luster of a once-beloved savant of Vegas entertainment. This episode contributed to a growing narrative of mistrust surrounding Newton. For Newton, continuing to manage the theater alone proved nearly impossible. The mounting debts from the venture created an additional financial burden, making recovery from past setbacks even more challenging. This failure echoed the pattern of his earlier risky ventures, underscoring how personal relationships and financial missteps intertwined in his life. As alliances crumbled and controversies deepened, the dream of a lasting legacy turned into a costly, complicated nightmare. Casa de Shenandoah Nightmare. Wayne Newton's love for luxury and legacy came together in Casa de Shenandoah, a wide 39.5-acre estate right at the center of Las Vegas. It wasn't just a place to sleep or even to unwind. It was kind of a showcase of his wins and of his tastes. Arabian horses, exotic birds, and fine cars. Tucked into the Nevada desert, the whole setup felt like the top tier of Newton's Vegas personality, like a mirror of the star who had once owned the Strip. For years, Casa de Shenandoah acted as a personal sanctuary and also a clear signal of status. But then that dream slipped, and soon it became a financial and legal mess. In the early 2010s, Newton hooked up with CSD LLC, which was run by Lacey and Dorothy Harbour, and the goal was to turn the estate into more than a private retreat. They wanted it to become a tourist stop, with public tours, a gift shop, and even a wedding venue, all meant to highlight Newton's career and keep his legacy lingering in the public mind. For a lot of fans, the idea of converting the property into a museum for Mr. Las Vegas felt reasonable and, honestly, exciting. But the renovation process sort of soured the partnership pretty fast. Tensions popped up, mostly when disagreements on how to manage and renovate Casa de Shenandoah started to escalate. Newton was reportedly told to go ahead and leave the property during construction, but later he said the company wouldn't let him come back once the work began, which, in his view, was like a locked gate after the fact. That whole spat then sparked a bunch of lawsuits, with Newton alleging the company breached the contracts and also that it had mismanaged the estate. At the same time, the neighbors around the area grew frustrated too. The wave of visitors, the construction noise, and the extra traffic kind of trashed the calm that had been there before. Las Vegas's non-stop entertainment scene often collides with local communities, and Casa de Shenandoah became a flashpoint for grumbles, concerns, and overall complaints. Those outside pressures stacked on top of an already messy situation. The legal battles wore on, draining Newton's resources and his patience, sort of grinding everything down. The disputes spilled beyond the company and into fights with the city itself, which made the whole project feel harder to steer, even when he tried. At first, it looked like this legacy-building initiative. You know, the kind that sounds solid, historic, almost inevitable. But then, it started to resemble a financial pit, swallowing time, energy, and money, like quietly at first, then all at once. The prestige of Casa de Shenandoah faded under that constant pressure and weight of things that never quite settled. In 2016, Newton was forced to sell the estate. The sale basically shut the door on a painful chapter, one that many people treated like a symbol, not only of lost money, but of aspirations that went sideways. What started as a monument to a storied career ended up feeling like a sobering reminder, almost cruel, of how dreams can shift into burdens. For Wayne Newton, the loss wasn't just a spreadsheet problem, it was deeply personal, as much as it was financial. And, beyond the obvious monetary costs, the Casa de Shenandoah project failure also dimmed his public image. Fans who once admired his success began noticing cracks in the facade, and not the cute kind either, the real kind. The collapse of the estate painted a picture of someone trying to cling to his legacy while relentless setbacks kept stacking up. Even his reputation as a savvy businessman took another hit, like the last one wasn't enough. As the Casa de Shenandoah saga closed, another wave of challenges emerged, ongoing lawsuits and mounting debts that continued to erode Wayne Newton's fortune. Mounting lawsuits and debt. Toward the later years of his life, Wayne Newton found himself besieged by a seemingly endless tide of legal troubles. Former employees filed lawsuits alleging unpaid wages, while various creditors demanded settlements on debts that had accumulated over decades. The financial strain tightened its grip, transforming Newton's once glamorous empire into a battleground of courtrooms and claims. These lawsuits were more than just isolated incidents. They reflected deeper issues in Newton's financial management. Poor oversight and unresolved obligations had allowed these conflicts to pile up, each threatening to chip away at his remaining fortune. Legal fees alone became a significant expense, draining resources and adding to the mounting stress that Newton endured. The public spectacle of Newton's financial decline was stark. Headlines that once celebrated his hits and performances shifted focus to recount court cases and bankruptcy details. It became difficult to separate the entertainer from the controversies surrounding his name. The irony was hard to miss. A man whose velvet voice once captivated millions was now better known for courtroom battles. As lawsuits multiplied, Newton's ability to generate income was strained. While he continued to perform, the demands of debt repayment and legal fights limited his capacity to invest, grow, or recover financially. The pressure to maintain appearances was immense, as fans and the public witnessed the toll these struggles took on him both professionally and personally. Despite everything, Wayne showed remarkable resolve. He kept performing, sometimes in smaller venues, using his music to connect with loyal fans and to make ends meet. Yet, the financial reality lingered. Each paycheck was a balancing act: pay off debts, cover legal costs, and keep the lights on. The glamour of the stage masked a harsher truth of survival. Worse still, the accumulation of lawsuits created a cycle that made financial recovery nearly impossible. Creditors, employees, and business partners all sought compensation, leaving little room for Newton to maneuver. The legal system became as much a part of his daily life as rehearsals and performances had been in his prime. This relentless pressure affected Newton's reputation in the entertainment community as well. Once respected as Vegas's shining star, he faced skepticism and caution from fellow performers and industry insiders. The story of his financial decline became a warning about the perils of mixing fame with overextended ambition. The weight of these legal and financial challenges set the stage for a resilient return, revealing the deeper truth Wayne Newton finally shared about what truly led to his downfall. Resilience and reflection at 83. At 83 years old, Wayne Newton still feels like a symbol of resilience in a sort of slow-motion way. After all those years of stardom, bankruptcy, lawsuits, public scandals, and a lot of personal setbacks, he just wouldn't fade out. Not really, not from the stage. For Newton, performing isn't merely a hobby or even a career. It's been more like a lifeline, his identity, and also somehow a bridge that keeps him tied to the fans who have stuck with him for generations. Now his shows are smaller, more close-up, and far less like the huge Las Vegas productions that once shaped his name. With Wayne up close and personal, he brings out music memories and stories from a life that had both bright glory and real hardship. The stripped-down setup makes it easier to see a more vulnerable side of the man who was once very widely called Mr. Las Vegas. In 2021, Newton had a serious spinal injury, the kind that could have ended his performing days, and he still pushed forward like nothing, insisting that the stage was where he felt most alive. Financial pressure has stayed right in his day-to-day too, with debts and legal battles kinda stacking up, adding this bittersweet aftertaste to every new show. And still, his fans keep showing up, not just for his voice, but for his sheer endurance, his ability to keep going. Newton's story is basically about the price of fame, the real danger of unchecked ambition, and the extra weight that comes from personal choices. But there's another side to it, because it also proves that reinvention can happen even after a brutal loss. Wayne Newton's story is, honestly, not finished. At 83, he keeps performing. He keeps reflecting. He keeps fighting for his legacy, showing that after hardship, resilience can keep the music playing. Wayne Newton's rise and fall reveal the thin line between fame and hardship. But his resilience shines through. A career marked by dazzling highs and heartbreaking lows teaches us about perseverance and the cost of ambition. If you found this deep dive into Wayne Newton's life compelling, please like the video and subscribe for more insightful stories about the lives behind the limelight.